Ah, they walked away, huh? Like you didn't matter. Like your silence meant surrender. Like your loyalty was disposable. They dipped when things got quiet. When the fire stopped burning. When you weren't handing out pieces of your soul on a silver platter anymore. But you want to hear the beautiful part, kid? You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You just disappeared. And that's when it started. That itch. That burn in their chest they couldn't scratch. That little whisper inside them at 2 a.m. saying, "You messed up." You see, presence. Real presence. It's not about loud noise. It's not about posts or texts or pretending to be fine. It's about that invisible grip you leave on someone's mind when they thought you'd always be there. And then you're not. And now they're choking on that silence. They're starving for what they used to drown in. You gave too much, didn't you? You gave time, energy, truth, loyalty. And what did they do? Treated you like a background character in a story you wrote for them. But here's the part they never tell you. Absence hits harder than presence ever did. It's not when you're around that they realize what you mean. No, it's when you vanish. Like smoke. Quiet. No explanations. No one last time. Just gone. That's when it begins. That's when your presence starts haunting them like a ghost they can't get rid of. And you want to know why? Because truth has a way of echoing. Loyalty has a memory. And silence, oh, silence screams louder than rage ever could. I know what you're feeling right now. That sting, that hollow chest, that tight throat. You think they forgot you, but the joke's on them, because now they can't stop remembering. That's the game nobody talks about. When you walk away clean, when you walk away without noise, they start writing a story in their heads. They question everything, every word you said, every move you made. They start to replay every scene like a broken film, hoping they missed something, but they didn't. You just meant more than they were ready for. And now? Now they're craving you like air in a suffocating room. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna break it down for you. One by one. 10 reasons. 10 blades that twist in their mind long after you're gone. 10 things that make 'em miss you so bad it hurts. Not because you're perfect. Because you were real. In a world full of masks, you walked in barefaced. And they weren't ready for that. They weren't built for that. But now? Now they look around and all they see is fake smiles and shallow hearts. And they whisper your name in rooms you'll never walk into again. Not because they love you. Nah. Too late for that. Because they lost you. And now they want you back. Not for who you were, but for what they're not. So sit back. Keep your silence. Let them drown in the noise they chose. And while they scroll and stalk and wonder if you still care, let me tell you why. they can't stop craving you. Let's begin. First reason. You were the only one who truly saw them. You know the sick part? They weren't even used to being seen. I'm not talking about likes on a post, or those fake "how are yous" people ask when they don't give a damn about the answer. I mean really seen. You noticed the pain they never admitted. You heard the silence between their words. You looked in their eyes and called out things they never said out loud. You saw past the filters, past the games, past the tough act. And for a second, just a second, they felt safe. Like maybe they didn't have to pretend anymore. Like maybe someone understood them without them needing to bleed for it. And that scared the hell out of them. Because people like that, they live in shadows. They wear their trauma like armor and call it independence. They push people away just to see who comes back. And you stood there. No mask, no backup. Just pure, raw presence. You made them feel human. And that kind of connection, you don't just forget that. You can fake a lot of things, but not being seen, not being understood. That sticks to the ribs, that burns. But here's where the joke flips. When someone's used to being invisible, and then someone shows up who actually sees them, it's like staring into a mirror they weren't ready for. You didn't just compliment them, you exposed them. Not to the world. No, worse, to themselves. You made them face the fact that they've been hiding from their own reflection. You made them question how they've been living, who they've been choosing, what they've been accepting. You broke the pattern, and when you walked away, oh boy, it wasn't just the absence of a person, it was the disappearance of clarity, of light, of that one person who got it. And now, every time someone smiles at them, it feels hollow. Every "I miss you" from someone else feels rehearsed, because you meant it. You weren't perfect, but you were present. You weren't flawless, but you were real. And real doesn't grow on trees. It don't slide into DMS. It don't hit you up just when it's convenient. Real shows up when it's ugly. Real sits with the pain. And real walks away, not because it stopped caring, but because it got tired of proving its value to the blind. You didn't just see them, you made them feel seen. And now they feel more alone than they did before you showed up. Because before you, loneliness was a constant, normal. After you, it's a gaping hole, a loud silence, a ghost. That's why they crave your presence again. Not because they loved you right, but because they didn't know how to handle someone who loved deep. And that kind of wound, it reopens every night. In every room you're no longer in. In every moment they smile and secretly wish it was you there instead. You weren't a moment. You were a mirror. And they still can't look away from the cracks you left behind. Second reason, you gave without keeping score. That's the part that messes them up the most. You gave without needing to be reminded. You gave without needing to be begged. You gave without keeping a damn scoreboard. You gave when they didn't deserve it, when they were distant, when they were cold. You gave when all you got in return was silence, attitude, confusion. You gave your time. You gave your attention. You gave your soul. And you did it because you wanted to, not because you were trying to get something out of it. That's what separates you from the rest of them. They were used to transactional affection. I do this. You give me that. But you gave because it was in you. Because kindness wasn't a tactic for you. It was your nature. And they didn't know what the hell to do with someone like that. They thought there had to be a catch. Some hidden agenda. Some trap. They didn't believe someone could be that loyal without a leash around their neck. So they mistook you for weak. They took advantage. They tested how far you'd go. And you kept giving until you didn't. And now the absence of that giving, it burns. Now they notice that no one else checks in like you did. No one else shows up without a motive. No one else listens without waiting to talk. No one else gives without expecting receipts. And it eats at them. Because they remember the nights you stayed up just to talk them down from their chaos. They remember the little things, the way you noticed their mood before they even said a word, the way you remembered things they only mentioned once, the way you protected them from their own self-destruction without ever bragging about it. You gave like it was your job to carry both your world and theirs. And they just received. Greedy, silent, entitled. And now that fountain's dry. And the desert they're walking in, it's got your name written all over it. You want to know what haunts them? Not your leaving, not your silence, but the comparison. Every person they talk to now feels less attentive, less patient, less giving. You ruined average for them. You destroyed their taste for half effort, and now they crave what they took for granted. But it's too damn late. Because you weren't a free refill. You weren't a vending machine. You were a human being with limits, with scars, with depth. And once you saw the pattern, the taking, the using, the empty gratitude, you pulled back, not to punish, but to preserve what was left of you. And oh, now they sit there pretending they're fine, putting on smiles, acting like losing you was part of some grand plan. But late at night, when the world gets quiet, that guilt, that ache, it starts crawling up their spine. Because deep down they know they had someone rare, someone who gave like love was infinite. And they know they didn't match it. They never even tried. And that imbalance, that unequal exchange, it haunts them more than any fight ever could. Because the moment they realized they couldn't find that kind of love again was the same moment they realized they never deserved it to begin with. Third reason, you stayed when it wasn't easy. You know what separates you from everybody else they ever met? You didn't just show up when it was pretty. You didn't just love them when they were lovable. You stayed when it was messy. You stayed when they were cold, distant, confused, and angry at things that had nothing to do with you. You stayed when their trauma started speaking louder than their love. You stayed when they were pushing you away, testing if you'd abandon them like everybody else. And you didn't. You kept showing up, not because you were blind, but because you understood. You knew that pain doesn't come with instructions, that healing doesn't happen on a schedule. So, you gave them time, space, grace. You took hits that weren't meant for you. You held hands that trembled and still called them home. You stuck around when others would have left without looking back. And now, that loyalty haunts them. Because guess what? Nobody's staying now. People love fast and leave faster. One argument, they're gone. One bad day, they ghost. One mistake, they disappear. But you were different. You gave them chance after chance to be better. You believed in the version of them that even they stopped believing in. You didn't just see their scars. You respected them. You tried to love them through the storm. And now that you're gone, now that you finally had enough, that storm's all they've got left. And it's colder now, darker, because the one umbrella they had, the one soul who stood in the rain with them, isn't answering anymore. And here's the twist. They might not say it out loud. Pride won't let them. Ego's got a tight grip on that throat. But inside, they're screaming. They miss how safe you made chaos feel. How your words could calm 100 overthinking thoughts. How your silence never felt like distance. It felt like peace. You were their anchor. And they didn't realize that until they started drifting further and further without you holding them down. Now, they reach for people hoping to feel that same security. And it never comes. Because those people don't care enough to stay. They don't dig deep. They don't ask the right questions. They don't listen long enough to understand. They just want the fun parts, the surface, the easy stuff. But you sat through the war. You took the punches. You tried to understand the language of someone who didn't even know how to speak their own truth. And now, they look back at the wreckage. And every time someone walks away from them for being too much, they remember how you didn't. And it breaks them, quietly, because they know they broke you. They know you had every reason to walk earlier, but you didn't. And that kind of loyalty, that kind of patience, it's unforgettable. It leaves a mark, a permanent bruise on the soul. So now they crave your presence, not because they've changed, but because they miss how you made their mess feel manageable, how you never judged their broken pieces, how you loved them when they were hard to love. But you're not there anymore. And all they're left with is the silence of someone who once stayed through hell and finally learned to walk away. Fourth reason, you never asked them to be anything but themselves. Here's the part that's eating at their insides, and they won't admit it to nobody, not even the mirror. You never asked them to change. You never tried to fix them. You didn't pressure them to become some ideal, some Instagram version of a partner, some picture-perfect person pretending to have it all figured out. Number, you accepted them as is, flaws, moods, mistakes, all of it. You weren't in love with their potential. You were in love with their present. And that kind of acceptance, that kind of unfiltered, unconditional space, it's terrifying for people who've spent their whole life wearing masks. You made them take it off, not by force, but by presence. You didn't try to make them better to make your life easier. You loved them right there, in the middle of the mess. And that kind of love, that kind of peace, it becomes a drug they don't realize they're addicted to until the supply runs dry. You want to know why it haunts them now? Because everywhere they go, they gotta pretend again, gotta act okay, gotta filter their emotions, gotta tone it down, hide the weird parts, fake a little confidence here, add a fake smile there, but with you, they were raw. They could be soft without feeling weak. They could be vulnerable without feeling judged. They could be quiet, and it was still enough. That's what they miss. That feeling of enough. That freedom. That I don't have to perform today kind of love. And now it's gone. And they're back in the circus. Back juggling egos and expectations. Back trying to be liked instead of being loved. You didn't need them to impress you. You didn't fall for the mask. They didn't even have to wear it. You saw value in their silence, in their broken thoughts, in their complicated stories. You saw them, not the version they posted, not the image they projected, just them. And that's rare. That's once-in-a-lifetime type energy. People chase fantasies. You embraced the real. And the worst part? They weren't ready for it. They were scared of being seen. So, they sabotaged it. They kept you at arm's length while secretly hoping you'd hold tighter. They made you feel like you were too much when they were just afraid of not being enough. But now, they're out there, hoping someone else will love the same mess you did. And guess what? No one does. Because most people don't have that capacity. Most people want the shiny, the simple, the soft. But you were willing to sit with the fire. You didn't need them to shrink their chaos. You just asked them to be honest. And that honesty, that comfort, that's the echo in their chest now. Every time someone gets tired of them, every time that they feel like burden, every time they start to shut down again, they remember you, the one person who didn't ask for anything except truth. And now that you're gone, every part of them feels the pressure to pretend again. But the problem is, once someone tastes real acceptance, fake feels like poison. You didn't just give them attention, you gave them permission to be, to exist, to exhale. And now, they're holding their breath in every room you're not in, craving the version of themselves that only ever came alive when you were near. Fifth reason, you matched their darkness without running from it. They thought they were too broken to be loved, didn't they? Too complicated, too much, too cold one day, and too needy the next. They walked through life, thinking no one could ever handle the weight they carried. And then you showed up, and you didn't flinch. You didn't run when the walls got high, or the silence got thick. You didn't panic when they shut down or lashed out. You matched that darkness. You sat in it with them. No flashlight, no preaching, just you, present, unshaken. You understood that people like them weren't asking to be saved. They were asking not to be abandoned. And that's what you did. You stayed. You walked through their hell without trying to paint heaven over it. You didn't need to fix it. You just needed them to know they weren't walking alone anymore. And that was everything. Most people see a little sadness and they back off. They hear the trauma, the regrets, the messy past, and they politely excuse themselves. But not you. You didn't get scared by their shadows because you had your own. You spoke the same unspoken language. You understood that love isn't about rescuing, it's about recognizing. And they never forgot that. They never will. Because now they're surrounded by people who only want the light parts, the smiles, the wins, the joy, the social media version of healing. But none of them can sit still when the room gets heavy. None of them can handle the ugly cries, the dark thoughts, the nights where the pain gets louder than the logic. But you could. You did. And you made it look effortless. You didn't offer empty words. You didn't say, "I'm here for you," and disappear when it got real. You stayed through the withdrawals, the mood swings, the confusion. You didn't take it personal when they snapped at you. You knew it wasn't about you. You didn't get offended when they needed space. You gave it without punishment. You didn't guilt trip them for not being cheerful. You sat with them in silence and let that be enough. And that kind of presence, that kind of emotional strength, it can't be replaced. That's not something they'll find in the next person or the next. Because most people only know how to receive love, not hold space for it. And now, they miss that balance, that peace, that safety net. That feeling of not having to pretend to be healed when the wounds were still fresh. They miss the way your voice cut through the noise, the way your energy calmed the storm, the way you understood without needing paragraphs of explanation. They're sitting in rooms with people who don't even notice the shift in their eyes, while you used to read whole pages from a single look. That's what's killing them now. Not just your absence, but the silence that replaced your understanding. You weren't afraid of their demons. You danced with yours and still found the grace to hold them through theirs. And now that you're gone, they're drowning in their own darkness again. Only this time, there's no one sitting beside them saying, "It's okay, I'm not leaving." And they crave you, not just for the light you brought, but for how you held them when the lights went out. Sixth reason, your absence taught them what presence actually meant. You know what's funny? Not ha-ha funny, tragic funny. They never really understood what your presence meant until it became a ghost, until the calls stopped, until the texts went dry, until your name stopped showing up in their notifications and started echoing in their memories. They thought your presence was a given, that you'd always be there, that no matter how little they gave, you'd keep showing up like a habit, like background music, like air, unnoticed until it's gone. But now every room feels louder, every day feels longer, every moment feels emptier, because your presence wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. You weren't just there, you were there. Mind, heart, soul, attention. You were locked in. And now that it's gone, they're starting to realize just how rare that actually was. They're surrounded by bodies, but starving for presence. You gave them something people don't even know how to give anymore. You were invested. When they spoke, you listened. Not to reply, but to understand. When they hurt, you didn't just say, "I'm here." You showed up. Even when it was inconvenient. Even when you were tired. Even when they were pushing you away. Your presence wasn't something they had to earn. It was something you gave because you chose them. Over and over again. And they confused that consistency with convenience. They mistook your availability for weakness. They assumed they could treat you like an option, and you'd always be there, waiting in the background. But they forgot one thing. Real presence doesn't beg to be appreciated. It just leaves when it's taken for granted. Now that you're gone, everything feels off to them. The jokes don't land the same. The laughs feel forced. The conversations feel scripted. Why? Because none of it is you. None of it carries that depth, that sincerity, that energy that used to fill the air just because you were in the room. You weren't loud, but you were loudly felt. You weren't always speaking, but your silence was a comfort, not an absence. And now your silence is deafening. Because it doesn't say, "I'm here and I care." It says, "I'm gone and I gave you every chance not to lose me." That's the part that's driving them mad. They know they didn't fight to keep you. They know they played it cool, distant, unbothered. And now they're paying the price. They're dealing with strangers who reply fast, but care slow. People who say LOL, but never ask how their day was. People who show up for the party but vanish in the storm, and it's hitting them. hard, that you weren't just another person. You were a presence, a force, a healing space, a safe place. And now that you're not there to remind them of what that feels like, every little moment screams your name in its absence. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They don't just miss you, they miss who they were when you were around. Calmer, lighter, more understood, more alive. You didn't just give them company, you gave them clarity. You gave them that rare feeling of being seen, heard, valued, even when they had nothing to offer. And now they're just another lonely soul, surrounded by people who only notice when they leave, not when they stay. You flipped the whole world upside down for them just by walking away. And now, every second of your absence feels like a lesson in presence they weren't ready to learn. Seventh reason, you were the calm in their chaos, and now it's all just noise. It used to be chaos inside them. You knew that. You felt it. The kind of noise that never shuts off. Overthinking, regrets, anger at the past, anxiety about the future, constantly running through their mind like a broken radio stuck between static and screams. And then came you, and you didn't fix it. You didn't silence it. You didn't promise to take it all away. But you sat in it with them. And somehow your presence didn't demand quiet. It became quiet, like the noise inside them finally had something stronger to listen to. You made peace feel possible without saying a word. Just your energy. Just your voice. Just the way you looked at them like you weren't afraid of their storm. Most people see chaos and run the other way. But you stepped closer. You made the madness feel manageable. That's why they could breathe deeper when you were around. That's why their heart didn't feel like it was sprinting even when the world was falling apart. Because you were the anchor, the eye of the hurricane, the calm. And now that you're gone, it's just noise again. Loud, messy, frantic noise. Everything's too much. Everyone's too loud. But not in volume, in vibe. The people they try to replace you with talk a lot but say nothing. They smile but offer no warmth. They touch but give no peace. It's all just static now. They can't find that quiet anymore. The kind that you gave without effort. The kind that came from knowing someone saw their worst and didn't run. You made them feel like they weren't crazy for breaking sometimes. Like they didn't need to explain their anxiety or fake a smile just to keep you comfortable. With you, they didn't need to shrink themselves just to fit. And now they feel like they're suffocating in every space that's not yours. They try to move on. They try to convince themselves that you were just a phase, just someone nice, just someone who cared too much. But the truth creeps in when it's quiet, when the calls end, when the new people get boring, when the masks fall off. That's when it hits. You weren't just someone. You were the silence between their storms. And now they're stuck chasing dopamine hits from conversations that don't go past the surface. They're stuck faking connections and pretending to laugh, all while thinking, this still doesn't feel like them. See, you didn't just love them, you understood them. You didn't just listen to what they said, you heard what they didn't. You spoke to the version of them that no one else ever met, the one buried under all the defenses. And now that version of them, it doesn't come out anymore. It went silent with you. They walk through life now surrounded by people who only meet the edited version of them, while you had access to the raw footage. That's what they crave. That's what keeps them up at night. Not your face, not your voice, not the things you gave, but the feeling. That rare, impossible feeling of being safe in the middle of their storm. Of finally finding peace in a world that thrives on pressure. Now it's gone. And peace feels like a myth, a memory, a dream they keep waking up from. And it gets harder every day to find that calm in someone else, because no one else was you. And no matter how hard they try to fill that silence, it keeps echoing your name. 8th reason, you made loyalty look easy in a world that doesn't know what it means anymore. They didn't know what to do with someone who didn't have a hidden agenda, someone who didn't flirt with options while claiming to be all in, someone who didn't play games with silence or dangle attention like a prize to be won. You didn't need to be begged to stay loyal, you just were, even when they weren't sure about you, even when they fed you mixed signals, went quiet for days, acted hot and cold like love was some game of emotional dodgeball. You stayed real, you stayed honest, you stayed. And in a world that swaps people out like disposable batteries, the second things get uncomfortable, your consistency scared the hell out of them because it meant something. It carried weight. And they weren't used to that. They weren't used to someone who was all in, heart first, without needing conditions or contracts. You made loyalty look natural, effortless, even when it hurt you to hold it. You stood firm when they doubted. You defended them when they weren't in the room. You protected their name, even when they didn't protect your heart. You gave them the kind of commitment people swear they want, until they realize how little they know about deserving it. You were solid in a world full of see-through people, and they took that solidity and leaned on it like it would never crack. They tested it. They pulled away to see if you'd follow, and you did, until you realized loyalty isn't loyalty if it's never returned. And when you finally stepped back, they felt the collapse, because your presence wasn't just a person, it was a pillar. And they built comfort around it without once asking themselves how much it cost you to keep holding everything up. Now, they're surrounded by people who post loyalty over everything on their stories, but can't even be consistent in a conversation. People who disappear for days and come back like nothing happened. People who choose attention over affection, validation over value. They talk about loyalty like it's a vibe, not a choice, not a discipline, not a sacrifice. And that's when it hits them, that everything they let go of when they let you slip through their fingers. That wasn't normal. That wasn't common. That wasn't something they'll find again just because they want to. Because you didn't give loyalty because it was easy. You gave it because it was right. You didn't stay loyal when it was convenient. You stayed when it cost you, when you were misunderstood, undervalued, ignored. And even then, you didn't speak bad about them. You didn't expose their flaws. You didn't humiliate them to heal your own wounds. You just walked. And now that silence is screaming louder than any goodbye ever could. They scroll through people now, trying to find what used to be a given, but it's not there. The late night conversations are shallow. The trust is missing. The loyalty is conditional. And every now and then, when the fakeness gets too loud and the loneliness gets too real, they remember how you never needed a reason to stay true. You were loyal because that's who you are. Because loyalty wasn't a method, it was your identity. And now that you're gone, they're realizing they weren't ready for that kind of love. Because you can't fake loyalty. You either live it or you lose the one who did. And that's what's killing them now. You were rare. You were real. You were the one they'll never be able to replace. Not because you were perfect, but because you were loyal when there was every reason not to be. And they broke something they'll never find again in a world that doesn't know how to hold anything real. Ninth reason, you never tried to outshine them. You just wanted them to shine too. You never made it about you. And that's something they never truly processed until now. You weren't in competition with them. You weren't there to dim their light just to make yours brighter. You weren't trying to prove you were smarter, stronger, more successful, or more loved. You didn't play that petty game of trying to win a relationship. You were rooting for them. Really rooting for them. Their growth, it excited you. Their happiness, you fed it. Their wins, you celebrated like they were your own. And now they're surrounded by people who clap with one hand, people who smile in their face, but secretly keep score. People who offer support with strings attached and motives hidden beneath fake praise. And it's draining them, because nobody wants to see them shine for real. Nobody except the one who already left. You were different. You saw their potential and didn't use it as a threat. You used it as a reason to stay. You pushed them, not to control them, not to get credit, but because you believed in them. more than they believed in themselves. You remembered the little goals they whispered at 2 a.m. You reminded them who they were when they forgot. You saw the fear behind their confidence and the courage behind their silence. You didn't mock their dreams, even when they sounded crazy. You stood in the crowd, silent or not, ready to cheer them on, even when you weren't invited to. You didn't need the spotlight. You were the support system. And now that you're gone, that absence feels like a stadium echoing with silence when they need a cheer the most. They didn't see it then. They thought your quiet love was just background noise. They thought your selflessness was weakness. They thought your way of letting them lead sometimes, letting them shine, letting them be the loudest in the room. It was just your personality. Nah, it was strength. It was discipline. Because you knew your own value. You didn't need to compete. And that terrified them. Because the world taught them that love is about control, about power, plays, about leverage. But you didn't play those games. You just gave. You just supported. You just wanted them to win. Now, they're trying to navigate a world where every compliment feels rehearsed. Every relationship is built on ego. Everyone wants to be better than the other. They miss you. Not because you flattered them, but because you were the only one who genuinely wanted to see them evolve. Not just survive, but thrive. You didn't need to dim their flame to light your own. You lit theirs and stood back with pride like, look at them go. And now they stand on their little wins, surrounded by people clapping with jealousy in their teeth, wondering why it all feels so empty. And the worst part? They look back now, realizing how you never made them feel small, never made them question their worth, never once said, you owe me. You were humble in your love, powerful in your presence, secure in your silence. And that energy, that's not something you stumble into every day. That's not something they're gonna find just because they swipe right or say the right things. That's rare. That's divine. And that's why they crave you. Because when everyone else needed the spotlight, you were the stage they stood on. And they only realized that once the lights went out, and all that was left was darkness. 10th reason. You left quietly, and that silence became the loudest sound they've ever heard. See, anyone can leave loud, slam a door, throw a tantrum, yell, I'm done, 10 times, so someone finally listens. But you didn't do any of that. You left like smoke. No noise, no warnings, no fireworks. Just gone. And that's what hit the hardest. That silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was surgical. It cut through the noise they were drowning in and exposed them to something terrifying. The absence of your energy. The absence of being cared for without asking. The absence of feeling safe, seen, and heard. They expected you to fight. They expected you to beg, to explain, to plead your worth like it was ever up for debate. But you didn't. You just vanished with your dignity intact. And that unbothered, composed, haunting kind of exit, it broke them in ways they'll never speak about out loud. Because silence, when it comes from someone who used to give everything, is not silence. It's a statement. It's a verdict. It's the final chapter written in invisible ink, left for their guilt to decode in the middle of the night. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because they stopped deserving. And now every second of peace you spend away from them, it echoes. Every moment you don't check on them, every day you don't reach out, it builds like pressure, like punishment. Not because you're petty, but because your absence has power. You taught them that love doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg for a seat at a table it built. It simply walks away when it realizes its value was being spent on the ungrateful. And now they replay everything. Every cold reply, every delayed message, every time they brushed off your efforts, every time they made you feel like you were asking for too much when you were just asking for consistency. They remember how they confused your patience with passivity, your grace with weakness, your silence with surrender. But now they understand. Now they feel it, that your silence was the loudest "I'm done" they've ever heard. Because people don't move like you did unless they're sure. And now, that certainty has become their sickness. Every time they open their phone and your name's not there, every time they laugh and realize it doesn't reach as deep, it's you. It's your absence. It's that quiet hole in their world they tried to fill with noise, but it just keeps growing. They'll never tell you this, of course. Too proud, too stubborn. But they talk to you in their head now. Whole conversations. What they should have said. What they wish they did. They scroll through old messages, pretending they're not looking for answers between the lines. They hear your name and flinch. They see someone who reminds them of your vibe and go silent. Because that kind of exit, it stays. It doesn't scream in the streets. It haunts in the quiet. It's not a door slam. It's the door disappearing entirely. And that leaves them knocking forever. You didn't leave to punish. You didn't disappear to manipulate. You left because you finally realized the difference between someone missing you and someone earning you. You gave them your soul, and they treated it like a souvenir. Now, all they have left is the echo of your presence, bouncing off walls that once held your voice. And no matter how many new people they bring in, no matter how many distractions they chase, nothing fills that silence, because it doesn't just remind them that you're gone. It reminds them that they lost something they'll never get back.